Hi everybody, welcome to this presentation on how to revise. This is an abridged version of the presentation given to parents and students on our How to Revise evening. There's some main things that we must take into account when we're doing any sort of learning, but especially revision. We need to think about our environment. So the environment that we're working in has lots of distractions and we need to make sure we minimise those as much as possible. So our attention is primarily on the thing that we want to achieve. Now when we're revising, this involves removing mobile phones, not playing music and turning off the TV. All of these things, whether we're directly attending to them or not, are going to take up space in our working memory. Unfortunately, music that's playing, our brain sings along. The TV will be a distraction. The mobile phone is there and we're very, very tempted to take a look at it. And there's evidence to say that even when there's a mobile phone next to us when we're doing tasks, some of our attention is there because we're always tempted to take a look at it. So we need to just remove those things for short revision periods. Another good way to do this is to make sure that we've got a revision space that is as effective as possible. It's ideally a quiet environment, which I know is not that easy in every household, but trying to find the best possible environment and making sure that we've got our equipment organised. So when we come to do our revision, we're not going to have wasted time or lost time going to search for a pen, some paper. Ideally, it's a space that is quiet with a table and a chair, so we can make sure that we're giving our full attention to the work. So as takeaways for students, it's making sure that we try and find the quietest environment and make sure that we don't create any distractions. Those are distractions we can remove, we must try and remove. And from a parental point of view, if we can try as best we can to create that quiet environment for our students to make sure that they can have short, sharp and really useful, high impactful revision sessions. We need to consider as well that our working memory is quite limited, so we need to be sure to make sure we don't overload that working memory. The best way to do this is to ensure that we have a plan, and those people who make a plan are much more likely to follow through with that plan. And if we can, we need to space it out over time. Rather than having blocks of revision that last 2 or 3 hours, it's trying to make sure that we do it little and often. If we can have sessions that are around 40 minutes, and even if there are a number of sessions in an evening, but we do 40 minutes, take a 20-minute break, and then do another 40 minutes and a 20-minute break, that is far more effective than trying to do 3-4 hour sessions, because our working memory just cannot cope with that, and all of the things that we're trying to retain will just be forgotten. So planning is absolutely essential, and we must be really realistic with this planning. We know that during school weeks, the days are out because we'll be in school. We also need to factor in the things that we know we're going to do in evenings. We need to be absolutely realistic. There's no point in setting out a plan that there's no chance of you sticking to. So you need to factor in things like sports clubs, socialising, things that you know are going to happen on certain weeknights and then certain things at the weekend, and then build sessions around it. So you can see here there's just a little example of possibly what you could do in terms of a revision timetable, to just factor in 30 to 40 minute sessions on 2 or 3 subjects in an evening with a nice break in between, to make sure that we allow the working memory to be able to use that information and not be overloaded. Here are our key takeaways. Making sure that any revision block is about 45 minutes as a maximum. We don't need to do longer than that to make sure it's really impactful. But going back to the distractions, we need to make sure that those 45 minutes are solely on that and they're not distracted with 5 minutes looking at a phone and other distractions in there. And parents, if you can help your student make a really realistic plan, talk through the things that you know aren't going to work, so you can make sure that what they've planned out they can stick to. And then we need to make sure that we try our best to get things committed to our long-term memory. Our working memory is where we process information and we combine it with things we already know. But we need to try and get things to a long-term memory. So when we have to sit assessments, we can sit down and we can draw from that long-term memory. Unfortunately, we all forget stuff. And it means that stuff can be forgotten from our long-term memory if we don't use it regularly enough. And if we don't process stuff in our working memory effectively, it will never be committed to our long-term memory. So how are we going to do that? We're going to use something called the testing effect. And the testing effect is the best way to consolidate learning. If we think about things, we're much more likely to remember them. And that's the really important thing about any revision session. It's absolutely essential that we do some hard thinking. Just reading over notes and highlighting things can be part of your revision, but that cannot be your sole revision. You cannot just expect to read things and remember them. We need to think about them. So how can we do that? We can do it in a very simple way, and this study shows that actually study without actually having to think, and the word test here isn't to use a physical test. The test is a test of the brain, having to think. You can see here on this graph that the worst results were those who just studied. They would be the people who just read over notes, looked at notes, maybe watched videos, that kind of thing. Whereas those who studied and took a test did a little better on the final test. But those who studied and then continually did tasks that made them think about this information, so test, got the highest outcomes on the final tests. So it shows that it's absolutely essential that we need to think hard about information rather than just see it, hear it, watch it. So the key to revision is thinking hard, and you need to make sure that when you are revising, that if you do any revision session, you need to be asking yourself, am I thinking about this information or am I just looking at it? And it's all about thinking hard. So there's lots of ways you can do that, and a really simplistic way, and I've used a knowledge organizer as an example here, but that could be anything. That could be any sort of revision guide, set of notes, whatever it might be. A really simple way to think about that information is to simply look at it, read over the key points, cover it up or get rid of it, close the book, and then try and write down the key points that you wanted to remember. And then check it, compare it back to that set of notes, knowledge organizer, whatever it might be, and then go back to your original and fill in any gaps. Now you might think, well, that sounds really simplistic, but you are doing the thinking. Because that thing has been taken away from you, you cannot just copy it. You're having to process that information in your brain and think about it to write it back down again. And that's a really simple way to make sure that you are thinking and not just reading over stuff. And that can be done with any amount of information that might be in front of you, in terms of summarizing some notes, doing 5 things off a knowledge organizer, using a revision guide to take out the key points. Anything that involves you reading over it, getting rid of it, and then having to think about it is really, really powerful. So just to reiterate, please do not just read and highlight notes. That can be part of it, to pick out the key information and make sure that you know you're seeing the stuff you need to know. But the thinking is the really, really important bit. So how can I do this? I would start any session with a brain dump. If I knew that I was going to do a session on a particular topic, before I looked at anything, I would write down all the things that I knew about that. That's the first bit of hard thinking. It does 2 things. It makes you think hard about the information that you think you need to know, but also it's a bit of a needs analysis. You will then know, actually, I know loads about this topic, and when you come to the notes, you might look over them and go, gosh, I wrote down pretty much all of this. That will mean you perhaps don't need a huge amount of revision on it. However, you could find the opposite and find, actually, I can't remember anything about this topic, therefore I need to put a lot of revision time into it. So it's a really good starting point for any session. It doesn't need to be neat. It can literally just be notes onto a scrap of paper where you've really thought about the content of things you need to be able to do for that section. Another way to do it, if we've looked at information, is to really try and reduce it down. So think, can I write down the 3 most important bullet points from there? Or write down a sentence in less than so many words. So you're not just having to try and regurgitate paragraphs and paragraphs. You're thinking, right, what were the key things in there? And make a list of them. And you can have a look at it again and go, right, what else did I miss? Hide it away again and try and put down a couple more key bullet points. Again, this is involving you thinking all the time. This is the testing effect. You're having to think about the information. You can transform it. There's loads of things that you can turn from graphics into words, or words into graphics. You can turn information into a flow chart. Things like biology are great for this, where there is a process and you can simply take it from a paragraph of writing and put it into a simple step-by-step flow chart. Or you can convert a photosynthesis diagram into words, or the words into a diagram. Anything that you can convert involves hard thinking. So it's a really good way to convert information into a usable form. Flashcards are fantastic. If you can use flashcards, they will be absolutely brilliant for your revision, because you can make sure that you can test yourself. The key thing here is to not put too much information onto a flashcard. So it could be a term and its meaning, or a definition. It could be a short question with a short answer. Those sort of things are really, really useful. Too much information is difficult to test yourself on. Don't fill them with loads of information. And what you need to do with these is hopefully have somebody who can work with you or do it on your own. But if you can read the question, think about the answer, turn it over and check whether you got the answer right or not. If you can do that with somebody, that's really useful because you're able to get them to check it and they can hold you to account. And also they might be able to prompt you and go, that's really good. You just need one key word. What could that one key word be? And it will allow you to really think hard about how to get it perfectly correct. Another way to do it is to use something called the Lightner system. This can be viewed on multiple YouTube videos, but I'll give you a really quick rundown of it. You put all your flashcards in box number 1 or pile number 1. It can be anything, an envelope, whatever you want it to be. You just need 3 of them. You put all of your flashcards into number 1. And what you do is set out in your revision timetable a little bit of flashcard time. And it could be 30 minutes where you visit box number 1 every 3 days and you look at the questions, you answer them. If you get them right, you move them up to box 2. If you don't get them right, you just go back to the bottom of the pile of box 1. And then you factor in on every 5th day a box 2 session, and on every 14 days a box 3 session. The same thing happens on your box 2 sessions. You go there 30 minutes, read all the cards that are in there, or as many as you can do in 30 minutes. You check whether you got the answer right. If you got it right, it moves up to box 3. If you didn't get it right, you take it back down to box 1 because clearly the last time you did it, you fluked it, you didn't know it, and it's not in your long-term memory. So it takes them back down to box 1. The idea is that you will regularly visit box 1 where the things you don't really know are, giving you lots of opportunity to finally know them and move them up to box 2. The reason box 3 only has 14 days, is every 14 days, is because that is information you've got it right twice. So therefore you're just consolidating that, and the hope is there that you probably know it. The idea would be over a long period of time that you keep popping flashcards into box number 1, but over time they all make their way to box number 3. And ideally, when we're getting up to our exams, box 1 and 2 are empty unless you're making new ones. And then we're moving everything up to box 3. Here's a little way you might set that out. So I've just used colour codes there for 1, 2 and 3, and I've just used a random month, but you can see there they are 30-minute sessions dropped into each of those days, and you can see that on the majority of days there's not a double up, but you can see that you would do box 1 on the 1st of the month, the 3rd of the month, the 6th of the month, and you can see the blue boxes are box 2s, and then you've got a couple of box 3s in that month. So they're 30-minute sessions. The amount you can achieve through flashcards in that way is really, really good. And what it makes sure you're doing is you're doing the testing effect, but you're also visiting the stuff you're finding most difficult most regularly. So it's a really, really great system. So the key to any revision is thinking hard. That brain needs to work. And if you're not doing that, if you're not testing yourself by having to think, you're not being overly effective. So what I would also like to talk about is making sure that we use our online platforms and AI to support our revision. The key thing here though, when we're using AI, is to make sure that AI is not doing the thinking for you, okay? AI can be used to create you thinking opportunities, but you must not be putting questions into AI to give you the answers, okay? You might do that after you've done the hard thinking to check your answers, but just putting it in and discovering the answer, well, AI discovering the answer and you reading it is not the hardest thinking. If you've done the thinking first and it produces you an answer, fine, but please make sure you are not replacing your thinking with AI thinking. So a couple of things for our Key Stage 4 students is to make sure you use Sparks Maths and Sparks Science and other platforms that are used by your faculties, because they are really, really good ways to tailor the information to your level on the topics you need to know, and they create hard thinking and lots of practice. So please don't shy away from those because you think, oh well, they're the things I use for homework. They're great for revision as well. Speak to your teachers about what can you do on those platforms to help you revise, because they are really, really powerful. In terms of AI, we can use things like ChatGPT, Google Gemini and other AI platforms to create a revision plan really, really quickly. So in terms of a revision plan, you put in the things that you want to know, want to include in your revision plan, and it will return it out within about 30 seconds. So it's really good. It's really adaptable. So things you need to make sure that you put in though. You need to put in the time period. So if this is a run up to your PPEs, it might be a shorter time period. Ideally, if this is run up to your GCSEs or A-level final exams, you're setting this out starting far earlier. And you can put in the number of weeks or days up until your exam. The subjects you need to cover, so just a list. The length of time you'd like to spend on each session and how many sessions you want to do each day. You could even stipulate that it's different on different days. So you could put that I want to do 40-minute sessions. On a Tuesday, I want to do 2 sessions. On a Wednesday, 3. Thursday, none, because I have football training or whatever it might be, and I want to do X amount of the weekend. And you can just specify those things. And then, add any information in there about missing out particular days or any stipulation, so it doesn't just evenly put them out over the 7 days. And then ideally, if you can, is to put in there a list of the topics that you need to revise from for each subject, because what it can then do is allocate you a session, so a 40-minute session on biology on a Monday evening, and it's going to be on these topics. Okay, so it can start to really be bespoke to the things that you need to do. So I used a prompt that looks something like this. So you can use something really similar. I've done it for an A-level student, but you could do it for a GCSE student. And I put that prompt in. You can manipulate that prompt however you wish, but I just done this as a run-up to PPEs with a 4-week revision timetable. And it turned this out for me. And it shows there that it's taken into account that I only wanted to do 1 session on a Saturday. It's done biology, chemistry and maths. And I could specify on there as well the timings I want to do them on a Monday. I want to do them between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m, for example, and it will put the times in for you as well. So the more information you give it, the more precise it will be, but it can be done really quickly. And if you're not happy with it, you just add another line, another prompt in, and it will change it, and you can make it absolutely perfect. Another way to do it, to use the same platforms, is to summarize your lesson content. So here's a prompt that you can manipulate to help you produce some information. So you can attach things like your notes, lesson slides, the specification, and you can ask it to summarize, make you a really sort of bespoke version of that information for you to then revise from. So if you are going, I've got all these notes on all these things, and I don't even know where to start. I'm reading through a PowerPoint, I'm reading through my notes. It's just not precise enough. Then you can simply put it in, ask it to do something, ask it to emphasize the things that you don't really know very well, and it will turn out for you a summary that you can then read over, highlight, hide away, and then do some of those hard thinking tasks on. So you can take it away, you can read it, and then you can do the summary type tasks when you can't see it. So use it to your advantage. Use it to convert some of the things that you've got from your lessons or previous revision and consolidate it so you really get to read over the things you really need to know. You can also test your knowledge. So you can create a range of practice questions. You can ask the platform to create a number of questions, whether they are multi-choice, whether they're short answer, whether they're even essay questions, and you can ask it to make a mark scheme. Okay, you can even, having typed it, copy it back into the platform and say, based on the mark scheme that you produced, could you mark this and give me a mark? And it will be relatively accurate. What we must remember is that they're not exam board specific, so it will only base it on the information that you give it. So you just need to make sure that you don't take it as absolute read, that it's going to be perfectly marked, but it will certainly give you a very, very accurate indication. So a couple of considerations. Always, if you ask it to make questions, it's always worth, and you can get these easily off any exam board website, is a practice paper and a mark scheme, so they know, the platform knows what the style of questions are and what the mark schemes look like, so they can replicate it with information that they might make. If you can put the specification in there as well, which again will be a PDF that you can find on an exam board website, or you can ask your teacher where you'd find it, or they can give you a copy. It means that, again, when it's creating questions, that they don't veer too far away from the syllabus that you're going to be talking about. But finally, it's just when you are relying on it to mark them, just don't rely 100% on it being perfectly accurate, because it doesn't know the nuances of how a marker has to mark for OCR or Edexcel, but it will give you a very, very accurate indication. It just may not be perfect. So just be careful of that. And again, please make sure that if you are testing your knowledge, you're doing the thinking, AI is doing the checking for you. A couple of platforms that are really, really useful to you as well. One called Gizmo. Gizmo is really useful. When you log in, you've got the opportunity to click learn or add. So if we go to learn, it can ask us to do a couple of different things. We want to understand something or we want to recall something. So I'm just going to show you here the understand. If I click into understand, it will ask me to say, all right, what do you want to learn step by step? I could type anything into there and it will generate a process for me to learn it. However, you can see underneath here, there are a number of things you can use. You can put in your notes or a PDF or a PowerPoint that you can upload and ask, I want to know these things from here. But also there's lots of preloaded A-level and GCSE subjects that are tailored to different exam boards to help you learn different areas of different topics. So I can go in here, I've clicked the GCSE one here, and this list would go on. It's in alphabetical order, as you can see, and it goes from film studies all the way through the rest of the alphabet. I've just not put it on the screen. I've selected biology. I then select my exam board that I'm doing for that subject area, and then it will bring up this, and it has got the whole of the syllabus in there broken down into sections. And I can now go, right, I'm going to take the first bit of 1.1.1 of cell structure. I'm going to start the course, and it's going to give me the things that I need to know. So identify and describe the structure of animal and plant cells. And it's got some steps. These are the steps that it's saying that I need to be able to do to be successful in this topic area. If I think I already know some of these things, or I don't actually think they're relevant, I can use a little bin at the side and I can delete those away because I'm not going to learn them. However, if I think, yep, I do need to know those things, I hit start and it will take me to the first section, and it will ask, the first bit was about defining the cells and their basic functions. What I would be doing here is reading over this information, and I would then be hiding it away, hiding my iPad or whatever I'm doing it on away, and then I would be just replicating that. I would maybe have copied down the cell components, but then I would hide this information away and I'd go, right, can I write down the functions? And that would be my hard thinking here. If I'm struggling with the information, I can ask a question about it, or if it's really technical, I just don't understand it, I can click the explain like I'm 5 button, and what that will do is really break it down into simple explanations, and it will relate it to things probably outside of biology to help you think about things you can relate a process to. If I want more detail, I think, oh, this is really easy. I want to take this to the next level to make sure that I'm getting a 9 or whatever it might be, or an A star in A level. I can click the more detail thing. So once I've done that and I'm happy and I've done a little bit of thinking about it, I hit continue. When I hit continue, it'll just ask me one question, one random question about that topic area. I pick, A or B here, and then it will give me the answer. I can clarify it as well if I'm not sure, and then it will move me to the next section. So it's a really useful way of breaking down topics, and it's all done via AI. You just need to make sure you do the thinking, you don't just read the information. Another way to use it is to go to the add function, and at this point you can add flashcards. You can make flashcards in there that you can use and check whenever you want to. You can make them, so you could type in, like I've got a list of things I want to type in, and I can type in one side and then it'll flip over and I can write the definition and the answer on, or definition and term on the other side. But a really good way to use it is to use the imports function. And we've got a magic import function here where I can basically use pretty much any source and turn it into flashcards. So I might have a PDF of terms that I want to turn into flashcards. I might just have a load of notes that I think, right, I need to know all this information, make me flashcards on it. I can put a PowerPoint in. I can take a photo of some notes from a workbook or a folder. So there are lots and lots of ways in which I can import information and have it turn it into flashcards that I can then use as flashcard decks, and I can use the memorize function to learn them. So really useful platform to allow us to be able to do that. And the final thing that is really good to use is something called Google's Notebook LM. And in Notebook LM, you can do various things, but one of the key things that you can do is upload any materials that you've got, and it works best with PDFs. if you can convert things to PDFs, but it does use other documents as well. And it will allow you to create various different things based on those notes. And here you can see, I've just done a very quick version. I've uploaded a couple of pages from a revision guide on an area that I teach. What it does immediately, I haven't asked it to do anything at this point. It has summarized it. So in this blue box here, it's sort of telling me what's in the source, a little summary here of what the information contains in it. And then I can start asking it to do things. I can start asking it to do me a summary of the outlines and benefits of these ergogenic aids. I can ask it to make me some questions on it. I can ask it to make me a study guide. I can ask it to do anything that I want using that information. The beauty of this is it will only use the source, and if it goes away from the source, it will tell you that it has, because it will say, oh, I couldn't find this information that you've asked for in the source. Here it is, but it's not from the source. But you can make so many different things. You can make mind maps, you can create flashcards, you can create a quiz. One that's really, really useful is you can make a podcast, and it will turn the information into a completely believable conversation between two people, which is really, really engaging and easy to listen to. So if you find that you learn quite well in that way, and you can take in information via those sort of auditory functions, then I think it would be a really good way to do the work, the listening, and then convert that into some thinking, like what did they say? If that's a good way to hear things being explained to you, it's really, really useful way to use it. So there's lots of functions you can do there, and you can put in notes, your photos of your notes and so on in there. Any sources that you can use that you know are exactly the information that you need to learn, you can convert it into various different things in Notebook LM. So there's lots of techniques in there, but they all revolve around hard thinking. And please make sure that no matter what you do, whether you're looking over notes, that you make sure you do some thinking. If you're using AI to generate things, please make sure that you're doing the thinking and AI is not doing the thinking for you.